You've probably been told that silence is weak, that if you're not talking, texting, explaining, or chasing, you're somehow losing. But what if I told you that's a lie? What if everything you've been conditioned to believe about communication after a breakup is built on the wrong foundation? The truth is, most people misunderstand what no contact really is. They see it as avoidance, a tactic to win someone back, or just a temporary break. But if you're watching this, you're not looking for games. You're looking for clarity, for strength, for a way out of the emotional chaos and into a position of power, peace, and dignity. That's exactly what no contact offers, but not in the way most people imagine. This isn't about manipulation or trying to make someone miss you. This is about transformation. It's about stepping away from a dynamic that was draining you, undervaluing you, and chaining your self-worth to someone else's recognition. Right now, you may be in pain. You may feel tempted to reach out, explain, or seek closure, but deep inside, something wiser is awakening. A voice that says, "What if silence is the most powerful answer?" That's where today's video comes in. We're going to unpack the psychology, the emotion, and the power behind going silent, not from a place of revenge, but from a place of stoic strength. Because here's the reality. Your absence isn't just noticeable, it's deafening, and the more you step back, the more the other person spirals. Why does no contact make them obsess? Why does it shake their confidence to the core? What's happening in their mind when you stop playing the role they always expected from you? We're going to break this down step by step, through 7 deep truths that will not only help you understand them, but even more importantly, help you understand yourself. This isn't just a tactic, it's a philosophy, a lifestyle shift, a deep emotional reframe rooted in stoicism and self-mastery. By the end of this video, you'll not only know why no contact is driving them crazy, you'll be empowered to keep your silence, hold your dignity, and walk forward into the life you actually deserve. And trust me, the final part of this journey, the last truth we'll explore, is the one they fear the most. It's the realization that you've outgrown them, that the person they lost is not the one who's coming back, because that person doesn't exist anymore. So stay with me. What you're about to hear can shift the entire way you view heartbreak, power, and your own healing. This is not just about them. This is about you reclaiming your life with Stoic relationships at the core. Let's begin. When the void you left behind speaks louder than words. There's something profoundly unsettling about absence. Not the kind where someone is merely gone, but the kind where their presence once filled a space so deeply, so consistently, that its sudden vanishing becomes louder than any scream. That's what your silence has become to them, a roaring void. It's not just that you're not texting, not calling, not reacting. It's that your energy, once a daily certainty, has disappeared like breath into cold air, leaving behind a silence that echoes with everything they never appreciated. The truth they're struggling to confront is this: they didn't just lose you, they lost the space you occupied in their life, a space they never realized was holding them up until it was gone. And now, that space is speaking, louder and more clearly than your words ever did. When you practiced no contact, you didn't just vanish, you removed the soft landing. You took away the daily assurance, the emotional availability, the tireless understanding that they had come to treat as ordinary. But was it ever truly ordinary? The truth is, you were their home. You were the one who listened even when they didn't know how to speak. You understood them in silence, comforted them in chaos, and saw through them when they barely saw themselves. And now, that reflection is missing, that warmth is gone, and they feel it, not just emotionally, but physiologically. The brain processes emotional loss similarly to physical pain, and right now, your absence has become a wound they can't bandage. At first, maybe they felt free. Perhaps they mistook your silence for weakness. or believed it was just a temporary phase, that you'd reach out, as you always had, to restore the bond. But the days passed, then weeks, and now reality is setting in. You are not returning, you are not chasing. And with every moment of silence, their confidence in your accessibility deteriorates. The question starts to form, quietly at first, then louder. Did I lose them for good? What begins as a murmur becomes a panic. They start to look for proof of your presence, checking social media, rereading old messages, even asking mutual friends if you've mentioned them. But there's nothing, no hint, no trace. You've become a ghost, not out of cruelty, but out of self-respect. And that's what they can't handle. Your silence is not the absence of communication, it is a boundary. It is an act of strength. In Stoicism, we learn that the only thing we control is ourselves, our thoughts, our actions, our responses. When you stopped responding to their mixed signals, their half-hearted check-ins, their need for control, you reclaimed your center. And that center, once lost to their emotional turbulence, has now become your sanctuary. They're realizing that the comfort they felt was not self-made, it was fueled by your effort, your presence, your emotional generosity. And now that you've stopped giving, they're left to confront how much they took. You see, most people don't truly appreciate what steadies them until it's no longer there. And now that you're gone, they're experiencing the disorientation of emotional vertigo. They can try to distract themselves, go out, meet new people, bury the silence in noise, but nothing replaces what was real. They might have been the one to walk away, or maybe they pushed you so far that you had no choice but to disappear. Either way, what they didn't expect was for you to stay gone. In Stoic relationships, detachment doesn't mean indifference. It means holding firm to your own peace even when the world or someone else's chaos tries to shake it. You are not reacting. You are not chasing. And that stillness is unsettling. Why? Because it reflects to them the reality of what they lost. When someone loses a possession, they grieve. But when someone loses a person who loved them purely and without conditions, the grief is existential. They begin to question their choices, their behavior, and ultimately their own worth. Your absence now forces them to reckon with their own inner void, one that was once soothed by your care. And make no mistake, it's not that they can't find someone else. It's that they can't find you. They may seek out distractions, rebound relationships, or shallow connections, but the essence of what you brought to their life cannot be replicated. Why? Because it came from a place of truth. It was rooted in care, in selflessness, in a kind of emotional depth that only someone grounded in stoic strength can offer. And now, stripped of that anchor, they are left wandering. They might even grow bitter, blame you, tell themselves stories about how you never really cared. But that's just their ego shielding them from the deeper pain, the recognition that they were loved deeply and they didn't know how to receive it. Or worse, they didn't believe they had to earn it. Your silence has become their reckoning. It's making them face parts of themselves they would rather avoid. Their insecurities, their pride, their emotional immaturity, all of it now exposed by the simple, unwavering truth of your absence. And that is why no contact is so powerful. It's not passive. It's not manipulative. It's the clearest signal of all. I choose myself. In this moment, they are haunted not by your presence, but by the ghost of their own regrets. They remember the mornings you reached out with kind words, the nights you stayed up just to hear about their day, the way you always showed up, even when they didn't. And now, every memory cuts deeper because they know they won't be repeated. This isn't punishment, it's a consequence. And consequences are the final teachers. So if you've ever wondered whether your silence matters, whether it's being felt, know this: it is. More than you can imagine. It's filling every corner of their mind that once held certainty. It's creating doubt where there used to be pride. It's replacing their assumptions with fear. Because in their world, the one they built on the foundation of your love, your absence is an earthquake. The structure is crumbling, and the louder they try to cover it with noise, the more deafening the silence becomes. In the end, Stoicism reminds us we cannot control how others respond to our silence, but we can control the peace we cultivate in its place. Let your absence be your answer. Let the void you left behind speak the truth they refused to hear when you were still around. And as they sit in the silence, desperate for the sound of your return, you will know that you did the bravest thing of all. You walked away, not to hurt them, but to heal yourself. And that kind of strength, that kind of dignity, it echoes forever. That's what's driving them crazy. It too, the unfinished story haunts their mind. There's a unique torment that comes not from loss itself, but from the lack of resolution, the silence at the end of a conversation that never got its final words. And that's exactly what you've left them with. Not chaos, not anger, not some dramatic closure filled with harsh truths and final tears, but nothing. No goodbye, no final confrontation, just stillness, just space, just absence. And this mental cliffhanger is driving them insane. Human beings crave closure because it gives structure to emotional experiences. It gives us a tidy ending to file away into memory. But when you go no contact, you don't just stop talking. You deny them that emotional file. You refuse to write the final paragraph of the story they thought they were controlling. And now they're stuck, rereading the same pages over and over again, trying to make sense of a narrative that no longer follows their script. What makes it even harder for them is that you didn't storm out, you didn't make a scene. You didn't leave them with a last attempt to argue or explain or negotiate. You just stopped, quietly, stoically, with no more words to offer, no more emotional labor to give, and that choice, that clean detachment, has become the haunting, because now their mind does the talking. They're the ones replaying conversations, scanning old texts, searching for clues in your silence. They analyze every memory, wondering where it turned. Was it something they said? Something they missed? Should they have appreciated you more? Did you ever truly love them? Or were you already halfway out the door by the time things ended? These questions multiply, spiral, crash into each other like waves. And with no answers from you, they are left to answer them alone. And what they discover in those moments, in the private replays of what once was, is not comfort. It's doubt, it's regret, it's fear, because the silence you've maintained doesn't give them what they need to justify their past behavior. It doesn't let them craft a version of the story where they're still the hero, still the one in control. No, your absence has stolen that narrative from them, and what they're left with is a story they don't know how to finish. This is why no contact isn't passive. It's an active reclaiming of your peace and your power. In Stoicism, we learn that serenity is not the absence of emotion, but the mastery of response. You've chosen not to respond, not out of indifference, but out of purpose, because the truth is, nothing more needed to be said. You already said everything when you stayed longer than you should have, gave more than you received, forgave more than was fair. And when that stopped being honored, when you realized your voice wasn't being heard, your silence became your final sentence. And now that silence has become their prison, do they miss you, or do they miss the control they had when you still responded? Are they grieving you, or grieving the certainty they felt when they believed you'd never truly leave? That's what they're wrestling with. That's what's keeping them awake at night, and the longer they sit with it, the deeper the ache becomes. Because here's what they're slowly starting to understand. They don't get to have closure unless you give it to them, and you've chosen not to punish, not to manipulate, but to protect. Protect your peace, protect your growth, protect your right to heal without re-entering the same cycles. And that protection has a price for them. The price is ambiguity. The price is their imagination filling the void with fears and what-ifs. The price is watching someone they once took for granted now live beyond their reach. They'll look for answers in the wrong places, seek validation from others, post online in hopes you'll respond, but you won't. Because the version of you they once knew, the version that over-explained, over-apologized, overextended, that version no longer exists. You are becoming someone new, someone stronger, someone governed not by emotional chaos, but by calm principle. And that calm, that unwavering silence is foreign to them. They don't know how to handle someone who doesn't play by their emotional rules anymore. Someone who no longer bites the bait of guilt or nostalgia. Someone who simply walks away and does not turn around. That's what is haunting them. You are no longer the character in their story. You are the chapter they will never finish. And the not knowing, the mystery of your mind, your heart, your intentions, that's what eats at them. Because closure isn't just about understanding, it's about control, and without it they are lost in a storm of uncertainty. They may try to rewrite the past, convince themselves that you were the problem, that you were never invested, that this was always your plan. But deep down, when the lights go off and they're left with their thoughts, the truth creeps in. They had something real, and they lost it, not because you didn't love them, but because they didn't know how to receive it. And now they can't reach you, not really. Maybe they can physically message you, maybe they can send a text or leave a comment, but the access they once had to your soul, to your loyalty, to your unwavering support, that door is shut. And they feel it, like standing outside in the cold, knocking on a door that no longer opens. That's the power of no contact. It turns a page so fully, so finely, that those left behind can't flip it back. They can only stare at it, wondering what would have happened if they'd treated you better when it mattered. In Stoic Relationships, we learn that love is not sustained by neediness or dependency or drama. It is grounded in presence, respect, and mutual growth. And when that growth is one-sided, when one person is always carrying the emotional weight, love begins to erode. Your silence is not erasure, it is preservation. And while they spiral in the unknown, you are steady in your purpose. You are not obligated to explain your healing to those who caused your wounds. You are not required to comfort the person who fractured your peace. Your only duty now is to yourself. To stay aligned with your higher self, to remain centered, to let your actions reflect your new standard. And the beauty of this path? The more they seek you in old places, the more they realize they don't. Recognize the new you. The person you are becoming can no longer be reached by the same old games, the same old words, the same old charm. You've evolved. And that evolution is the ghost they can't silence. So as they sit there, caught between memory and regret, reimagining conversations they'll never have, hoping for answers they'll never receive, know that you've already done the bravest thing of all. You stopped needing closure from them and gave it to yourself. That's what truly haunts them. Like a song that cuts off before the last chorus, a story that ends mid-sentence, your silence has become the final punctuation mark on a chapter they can't rewrite. It is not cruel. It is not heartless, it is sacred, and it is earned. If this truth resonated with you, if you feel this on a soul-deep level, then take a moment, like and comment number 1 to let me know this part hit home. And don't forget to subscribe, because we're just getting started, and the next truths may be the ones that completely change the way you understand your power. Stay grounded, stay sovereign, stay stoic. 3. Their ego can't handle that you're doing fine. It begins quietly, almost imperceptibly. At first, they convince themselves that you're playing a game, that your silence, your absence, your distance is all part of some strategy meant to pull them back in. They tell themselves that you'll break eventually, that the silence is temporary, that you're hurting, crying, longing for them behind closed doors, and that you just don't want to show it. This belief soothes their ego. It reassures them that despite everything, they still matter, that they still hold power in your story. But as time moves forward, something terrifying starts to set in. You're not breaking, you're not reaching out. You're not stalking their socials, sending late-night texts or looking for signs that they miss you. You're just living. And not only are you living, you're thriving. And that is the moment when the unraveling begins. You see, people who are fueled by ego rely on the illusion of importance. They assume that their presence is so impactful, so irreplaceable, that losing them will leave you paralyzed. So when you don't fall apart, when you actually seem lighter, clearer, more focused without them, it cuts deep. Because in their mind, you were supposed to be devastated. Your days were supposed to be drenched in sadness, your nights filled with regret. They expected to see hints of your pain in cryptic posts, sad song lyrics, desperate pleas hidden in vague messages. But none of that comes. Instead, you remain grounded, calm, focused, not cold, but centered. And this stability, this composure, contradicts the narrative they've built about themselves, the idea that they were the best thing that ever happened to you, that you needed them more than they needed you, that without them you'd be lost. But now, with every passing day, that illusion dies a slow death. They start watching you more closely, not because they care, but because they're desperate for evidence that their ego can survive this. They become investigators of your life. Every photo, every story, every status becomes a clue. They want to see a crack in your strength, a weakness in your voice, a shadow of sadness in your eyes. Because if you're not hurting, then maybe they weren't as vital as they believed, and that's a reality they cannot bear. In Stoic relationships, power doesn't come from attention or dominance. It comes from emotional independence, from the ability to walk away without needing to be seen or validated. And that's exactly what you're embodying. You're not pretending. You're not putting on a show. You're simply no longer centered around them. And that shift, that detachment, terrifies them. Because for the first time, they're witnessing a version of you that no longer needs them, not emotionally, not psychologically, not spiritually. This version of you doesn't flinch when they appear, doesn't obsess over what they think, doesn't craft every move around the possibility of their return. And while you're doing the hard inner work of healing, processing, and evolving, they are spiraling in confusion. How can you be okay? How can you be better off without them? The questions mount, the doubts grow, and the ego begins to fracture. Because if you can survive without them, then what does that say about their place in your life? And even worse, what does it say about their ability to hold on to something valuable? Here's the secret they don't want to admit. They needed you more than they ever let on. Maybe not in the obvious ways, maybe not through words or gestures, but emotionally, you were the one anchoring the relationship. You were the one giving more, showing up, loving deeply. And now that you've withdrawn that love, not to punish but to protect, they feel the void. But unlike you, they don't know how to sit with it. They don't know how to transform it. They don't know how to rise from it. Because transformation requires humility. It requires the courage to admit wrongs, to own mistakes, to sit with uncomfortable truths. And the ego resists all of that. It prefers fantasy over fact, illusion over insight. It clings to the belief that they were right to walk away, right to hurt you, right to assume you'd never leave. But your strength, your silence, your peace, it challenges all of that. It shows them that you are not defined by their actions, their attention, or their absence. You are defined by your values, your principles, your growth, and the more they try to convince themselves that you're pretending, the more evident the truth becomes. You're not pretending. You're just done. That realization doesn't hit all at once. It seeps in slowly, like water through a crack in the wall. It comes in moments when they see your smile untouched by nostalgia, when they hear about your new focus, when mutual friends mention your glow, and it builds until one day they realize they don't recognize you anymore, not because you've changed who you are, but because you've returned to who you were before their influence dimmed your light. That return, that reconnection to your essence, is the most threatening thing of all, because now they're no longer dealing with the version of you who waited, who explained, who compromised endlessly. They're seeing a new version, a freer version, a version built through silence, reflection, and self-reclamation. And no matter how many times they try to tell themselves that you're just trying to look strong, their soul knows better. This isn't performance, this is presence, this is alignment, this is stoicism in motion, power without noise, dignity without drama, peace without permission. And as they watch you rise, they're forced to confront the truth of what they lost. Not just a partner, not just a connection, but someone who brought light into their life, someone who saw their shadows and didn't flinch, someone who gave them chances they didn't deserve. And now that someone is walking away, not bitter, not broken, but bold, with head held high and spirit intact, there is no wound to weaponize, no weakness to exploit, only strength, only silence, only presence. They may try to return, try to reinsert themselves, to test if your strength is real or just a phase, but they'll find no entry, because you are no longer where they left you. You are no longer waiting in the wings, rehearsing the lines of reconciliation. You are writing a new script now, one in which you are the lead, the author, the director. And they are just a character from a previous act, one who thought the show couldn't go on without them. But it has, and it's better than ever. And that is what their ego cannot handle. Not the loss, not the silence, but the revelation that they never had the power they thought they did, and that you, in choosing yourself, have found a freedom they may never understand. That's the gift of growth. That's the reward of walking away. That's the legacy of Stoic relationships. When the bond ends, the lesson begins. And you, by thriving instead of chasing, have become the lesson they'll never forget. 4. They begin overanalyzing your every move. When you were available, everything about you was predictable in their eyes. Your responses, your habits, your emotions, your reactions. They thought they had you figured out. They believed they understood the rhythm of your love, the beat of your patience, the depth of your presence. But now, your silence has shattered that illusion, and they're spiraling. What once seemed obvious is now a mystery. Every move you make, or don't make, becomes a puzzle their mind cannot solve. This is the mental chaos you've triggered, not with loud declarations, but with the unsettling power of doing absolutely nothing. Because now, stripped of your responses, they are left with their imagination. And that imagination is running wild. They scroll through your posts looking for signs. Is that lyric about them? Is that photo a message? Was that quote a signal? They obsessively check your status updates, watch your stories, maybe even ask mutual friends about you. But nothing they find gives them clarity, because you're not playing the game. You're not feeding the drama. You're not responding to the bait. And for someone who once relied on controlling the emotional narrative, this lack of control is intolerable. Your unpredictability, once hidden beneath layers of emotional generosity, has now become your greatest strength. You've become unreadable, unreachable, unshakable, and that frustrates them more than any argument ever could. Because people who once felt powerful through emotional manipulation begin to crumble when they can no longer get a reaction. In Stoicism, we are taught not to be moved by provocation, not because we don't feel, but because we choose to master our feelings rather than be mastered by them. You are embodying that now. Your lack of engagement is not a void, it is a boundary, and they're realizing just how reliant they were on your emotional responses to validate their worth. Now they're in the dark, and the human mind, when Left without answers, invent stories. They begin to ask questions they never asked before. Are you with someone else? Did you ever care? Have you completely erased them from your life? The questions become compulsions. The uncertainty grows teeth. They search for something, anything, that will tell them they still matter. Because the scariest thing for someone who's used to controlling the emotional temperature is facing the unknown. And right now, you are that unknown. They don't know what you're thinking. They don't know how much you've healed. They don't know if you still hurt or if you've simply moved on. That lack of clarity becomes their torment. They thought they had power when they could predict you, but now that you've stepped out of their emotional forecast, they're left chasing storms that never come. They analyze your silence more than they ever analyzed your words. They look at old photos, reread your texts, even try to find meaning in your absence. But no matter how deeply they dig, the truth remains elusive. You've changed. And not because of a new person or a new routine or some external transformation. You've changed because you've chosen yourself. You've stopped performing for their comfort and started living for your own peace. That transformation terrifies them, because if they no longer understand you, they can no longer predict you. And if they can't predict you, they can't control the narrative. And if they can't control the narrative, they are forced to face themselves. That's where the panic truly begins. Not in your silence, but in the mirror that silence holds up to their own reflection. For the first time, they are not the center of your emotional universe. For the first time, they are being treated the way they treated you, with distance, with silence, with the kind of indifference that reveals how deeply they took your warmth for granted. Now their overthinking becomes obsession. What are you doing? Who are you with? How can you be so unaffected? These aren't questions of curiosity, they're questions of ego. Because if you're doing fine without them, then maybe they weren't as vital to your happiness as they believed. And if that's true, then maybe the story they've told themselves about the relationship, about who mattered more, who had the upper hand, who was always chasing whom, was never real to begin with. In Stoic Relationships, we learn that the person with true power is not the one who clings, but the one who releases. You've released the need to be understood by someone who misunderstood you repeatedly. You've let go of the compulsion to explain yourself to someone who never really listened. And now that they no longer have access to your emotions, they're left clinging to assumptions. But assumptions are fragile. They crack under the weight of reality. And the reality is, you are no longer participating in their emotional drama. Your silence isn't empty. It's purposeful. It's deliberate. It's a statement they can't refute because it has no words to argue with. It's not passive-aggressive. It's not cruel. It's disciplined. And discipline is the language they never learn to understand. They may try to provoke you through posts, through friends, through rumors, but none of it lands because you've detached with grace. You're no longer in a reactionary state. You are observing, not absorbing. And that calm neutrality, that emotional neutrality rooted in Stoicism, it unsettles them to their core. They can't handle a version of you that doesn't dance to their emotional tempo. They can't control a person who is no longer afraid of being misunderstood. And so they overanalyze, trying to find a crack in your calm, a flaw in your silence, a reason to believe that this isn't real. But the longer you remain unshaken, the more real it becomes. You've grown beyond the old patterns. You've stopped explaining your worth and started embodying it. You don't need them to know you're doing better. You know it. And that self-assuredness, that inner stillness, is the proof they can't ignore. You've become the question they can't answer, the silence they can't decode, the mystery they can't solve. And that mystery is what keeps them hooked. Not your presence, not your attention, but your refusal to return to a version of yourself that made them comfortable. So if this part of your journey resonates, if you feel the strength in choosing stillness over reaction, like this video and comment #1 below to let it be known. Your power is in your presence, not your performance. And if you haven't yet, subscribe, because these truths are not just reminders, they are revelations. And more are on the way. Stay unbothered, stay centered, and most importantly, stay stoic. 5. Their pride keeps them silent, but it's killing them. There's a cruel irony in the way pride operates. It offers the illusion of strength while quietly orchestrating one's slow collapse. And for the person who once thought they had the upper hand with you, pride has now become both their shield and their prison. They feel the urge to reach out. They think about it constantly. They rehearse messages in their head, imagine how they might reconnect, fantasize about how you would respond if they just said the right thing. But then pride steps in, whispering poison-coated promises. Wait a little longer, don't give in. They'll come back first. And so they wait, silently. But what they don't realize is that their silence is no longer a strategy. It's a symptom of their inability to admit they were wrong, a symptom of their fear of vulnerability, a symptom of the truth they've avoided for far too long, that they lost something valuable and they have no idea how to get it back. Because reaching out would mean confronting what they've been running from, that you mattered more than they admitted, that they caused more harm than they wanted to acknowledge, and that they now face the possibility that you've moved on. Their pride won't let them face that possibility. So instead, they pretend not to care, pretend they're too busy, pretend it's all part of the plan. But behind that mask is torment, and it's growing louder every day. This is the inner war they now fight, not a war with you, but with themselves. Because while you're living, healing, building, and evolving, they're stuck in a loop. Pride tells them to wait. Fear tells them it's already too late. And that space in between, that tightening tension between desire and hesitation, is where the suffering festers. They watch your silence stretch across time like a road they're too afraid to walk. They replay memories not because they want to feel connected, but because they're desperately trying to remember the last moment they had any sense of control. And the truth, which they're not yet ready to say out loud, is that they regret not doing more, not appreciating more, not loving more. But instead of turning that regret into action, they armor up in pride, hoping you'll make it easy for them, hoping you'll break first, hoping you'll offer an olive branch that allows them to save face. Because that's what this has become. For them, not about love, not about healing, but about saving face. And face saving has no place in stoic relationships where truth and integrity matter more than appearances. The tragedy, of course, is that their pride won't just cost them peace, it may cost them their last chance at real connection. Because time is not on their side. The longer they delay, the more you transform, the more you pull your energy back into yourself, the more unreachable you become. And what began as silence is now becoming distance, not just emotional distance, but spiritual, energetic. You're no longer orbiting them. You're in a new realm, guided by purpose, by principle, by stoicism itself. And they feel that gap growing. They feel it in their stomach, in their chest, in those late nights when they stare at their phone, knowing your name is there but too paralyzed by pride to press send. What they don't realize is that pride cannot love, pride cannot nurture, pride cannot heal. It only protects. And the moment love requires vulnerability, pride becomes the wall that keeps connection out. They are walled in now, and the silence they once thought was power has turned into isolation. They thought withholding communication would make them appear strong. Instead, it's made them invisible. And the longer you remain detached, the more terrifying that invisibility becomes. They ask themselves questions but can't stomach the answers. What if you're happier now? What if you've already replaced them? What if they were just a chapter in a book you've already closed? These questions loop in their mind like static, and yet still, They say nothing because the ego would rather suffer in silence than admit weakness. But suffering doesn't fade just because it's unspoken. In fact, unspoken suffering becomes the most dangerous kind. It festers, it grows roots, it poisons. They begin to lash out, not at you, but internally. They grow short-tempered, restless, emotionally exhausted. Every little trigger reminds them of what they haven't said. Every conversation with someone new falls short because it's you they're still trying not to think about. But your absence is in everything now, in every song, every quiet moment, every smile that doesn't quite reach their eyes. You've become the ghost that pride cannot exorcise, because pride might silence a mouth, but it cannot silence a heart. And that heart, no matter how hard they try to harden it, remembers. Remembers how you showed up, how you forgave, how you held space, how you waited, and how eventually you stopped. That moment when you chose to stop waiting is the moment their inner world began to collapse. They may never admit it, they may never say a word, but deep down they know you were the anchor and now they're adrift. And every day they delay, every day they let pride sit in the driver's seat, the chances of reconciliation shrink. Because you're not standing still, you're not waiting by the phone. You're moving forward, quietly, powerfully, and each step you take into your new life is a step further from the version of you they once knew. That is what truly kills them, not just the silence, but what the silence signifies. It's not just the end of communication. It's the beginning of a new chapter, one they're not invited to. They thought they could come back any time, that you'd always be there, that love meant availability. But now they're learning a deeper truth. Love also means standards, boundaries, growth, and growth doesn't look back. In Stoicism, we are reminded to focus only on what is within our control. Your silence, your peace, your path, that is within your control. Their pride, that's theirs to wrestle with. And they are wrestling. Hard. Some nights they want to send the message. Other nights they talk themselves out of it. Some days they convince themselves you don't care. Other days they feel like they're suffocating with the weight of what they didn't say. This is the prison of pride. It convinces you that silence is power, when in reality, silence is only powerful when it's born from clarity, not fear. Your silence is strength because it's chosen. Theirs is weakness because it's reactive, and while you are standing still with purpose, they are frozen with fear. So now they linger, watching, waiting, hoping you'll crack, even as they're the ones crumbling inside. But you won't crack, because you've already seen what lies on the other side of pride: emptiness, disconnection, loss. You've seen what it costs to stay silent when your heart wants to speak, and you've decided never to live in that space again. That's the difference. That's what separates the Stoic from the stubborn. The Stoic chooses silence as a path to peace. The prideful chooses silence as a mask for pain, and behind their mask, they are breaking. You don't need to see it to know it. You can feel it in the energy, in the air that shifted the day you stopped explaining yourself, in the heaviness they now carry alone. They may never come forward, they may never apologize, but understand. This silence speaks, and theirs is screaming, screaming with guilt, with longing, with a quiet desperation for the clock to rewind. But clocks don't move backward, and neither do you. You are not waiting for an apology. You are not sitting in bitterness. You are building, evolving, healing, and in that evolution you are becoming someone who no longer fits in the emotional mold they once placed you in. That is what makes your silence unbearable for them. It is not the lack of noise, but the evidence of change. They are no longer the one you turn to, no longer the one who can read you, reach you, or define you. And that loss is the one their pride cannot protect them from. It's the one that lingers long after the arguments fade, long after the games stop, long after the silence settles in. So as they sit in their silence, wondering when or if they'll ever have the courage to break it, you continue forward. grounded in your decision, not because you hate them, not because you're punishing them, but because you understand this fundamental truth. Any love that cannot coexist with humility is not love worth returning to. And any heart that chooses pride over peace is not ready to hold the kind of love you've grown into. That is what makes this silence sacred, and that is what makes their pride so unbearable, not because it keeps you apart, but because it keeps them stuck in the past, in the pain, and in the prison of their own making. 6. You've outgrown them, and that's the final blow. This is the part they never saw coming. Not the silence, not the distance, not even the fact that you've stopped chasing. No, the part that truly breaks them, the part that pierces deeper than any argument or goodbye, is the realization that you've outgrown them. That the person they once knew, the person they thought would always be there, no longer exists. They recognize your face, maybe even your voice, but the energy, the essence, the emotional posture, you've evolved beyond recognition. And that evolution is the final blow. Because while they were expecting you to wait, to break, to reach, back with a heart still tethered to them, you were busy transforming, quietly, powerfully. You took the pain, the silence, the abandonment, and instead of drowning in it, you let it shape you. You didn't just survive what they did, you used it as fuel to rebuild your boundaries, your vision, your self-worth. While they expected you to linger in the ruins, you were laying the foundation of something stronger. And now, there, looking back only to find you're no longer where they left you. This is what stings most, not that they lost you, but that they lost access to the version of you who tolerated the bare minimum, the version of you who explained yourself again and again, who forgave too easily, who waited too long. That version no longer lives here, and they can feel it. It's in your eyes, in your posture, in the way your energy no longer bends toward them. You've reclaimed yourself. And in doing so, you've created a distance no message, no apology, no manipulation can cross. In Stoic relationships, we understand that love must be aligned with growth. And when one person grows while the other stays the same, that love begins to stretch, to crack, and eventually to collapse under the weight of imbalance. You saw the imbalance, you lived through the silent disappointments, the mixed signals, the emotional neglect. You kept showing up hoping they would meet you halfway, but instead they kept pulling you backwards. And so you had a choice: shrink to fit their comfort zone or expand into your potential. You chose expansion, and that choice cost you the connection, but it gave you yourself. They, on the other hand, stayed still. Maybe they thought time would freeze you in place, that their absence would make you weak, that distance would make your love stronger, more desperate, more dependent. But what they didn't calculate was that you were done begging for the same. Love you so freely gave. You stopped asking for clarity because you realized that confusion was their form of control. You stopped seeking closure because you learned that closure is a self-given gift. You stopped offering unearned loyalty because you finally understood that loyalty without reciprocity is self-abandonment. And with each boundary, each moment of silence, each step forward, you shed another layer of the person who once made excuses for their behavior. They might still be trying to reach the old you, maybe through mutual friends, maybe through indirect posts, maybe just by lingering in your online world, hoping for a sign that you still care. But every signal they send bounces off your new self like a message sent to the wrong address, because your energy no longer recognizes them. And that is what makes this pain different for them. It's not just the loss of a relationship, it's the loss of privilege. The privilege of your patience, the privilege of your presence, the privilege of your emotional labor. And the moment they realize they will never again have access to the softness, the generosity, the unconditional love you once gave so freely, it hits them like a wave. Because now they see you, not as someone they once had, but as someone they never truly understood, someone they underestimated, someone they assumed would always be available. And the thought that you've moved on, that you've flourished, that you've become someone even more powerful without them, is a truth their ego can't hold. They wanted you to wait, to suffer, to prove your devotion, but instead you grew. And now you are too expansive to fit back into the space they once occupied in your heart. That's what haunts them, not your silence, but your success, not your absence, but your elevation. Because they didn't just lose a person, they lost an opportunity to grow with you, to evolve alongside you, to witness your transformation and be a part of it. But instead, they chose comfort over courage, pride over vulnerability, control over connection, and those choices now echo in their mind like unanswered calls. In Stoicism, we learn that happiness comes not from external validation, but from the quality of our own thoughts. Your thoughts now revolve around purpose, peace, presence. The person you were with them needed approval to feel secure. The person you are now needs nothing but alignment. And that independence is deafening. Because for someone who once defined their worth by how deeply you needed them, your freedom is a mirror they can't look into. It reflects everything they're not, everything they ran from, everything they lost. They may try to return, not because they've changed, but because they crave the emotional certainty you once provided. But you won't be there, not because you're bitter, not because you're punishing them, but because you've outgrown the version of yourself who tolerated love that had to be chased. You no longer entertain inconsistency. You no longer bend for crumbs. You no longer shrink for safety. And they can feel that. In every post you don't write, in every message you don't send, in every moment you choose yourself over nostalgia, you've become unreachable, not physically, but energetically. And that is the loss they'll carry, not for a week, not for a season, but for a lifetime. Because once you outgrow someone, going back isn't just impossible, it's unnatural. You've changed your mindset, your habits, your emotional frequency. They may try to replicate your presence with someone new, but no one else will have your soul, your patience, your depth. And the harder they try to recreate what they lost, the more they will realize it wasn't what you did that made you special, it was who you were, who you are. And who you are now has nothing to prove, nothing to chase, nothing to explain. You've become the version of yourself they weren't ready to meet. And now, all they can do is watch from a distance as you continue becoming even. More of what they couldn't appreciate. This is the final blow, not the silence, not the pride, not even the absence, but the evolution. The undeniable truth that the person they once knew has grown so far beyond their reach that even if they screamed your name into the void, you would hear it as nothing more than a distant echo from a life you no longer inhabit. If this truth hit you hard, if you know you've grown in silence and that growth has made you unstoppable, like this video and comment #1 below to claim your power. And don't forget to subscribe, because this isn't the end of your journey. It's the beginning of everything you deserve. Stay wise, stay resilient, stay beautifully stoic. So now you see, no contact is not about revenge. It's not a silent treatment. It's not a power play designed to provoke a reaction. It's a decision, a boundary, a moment of truth where you choose your own peace over the chaos of being misunderstood, manipulated, or undervalued. It's a shift from needing validation to embodying it. And when you make that choice, not once, but every day that you remain silent, you reclaim the one thing that was always yours, but often forgotten in the noise: your power. Not the kind of power that seeks control over others, but the quiet, unshakable kind rooted in self-awareness, in purpose, in stillness. The kind of power the Stoics wrote about when they spoke of inner fortitude. The kind that doesn't flinch when tested, And now, as they sit in the silence they never expected, as they struggle to fill the void they never thought you'd leave behind, you are walking forward, whole, focused, free. You are no longer reacting, you are no longer proving, you are no longer asking for a seat at a table where your worth was never truly seen. Because you've built your own table now, with stronger wood, with steadier hands, with a clearer vision of who deserves to sit across from you. This isn't just a phase, this is who you've become. Someone who understands that not every story needs closure, that not every person deserves a final conversation, that sometimes silence isn't a pause, it's the period. And in that ending, you begin again, with deeper roots, with clearer vision, with the kind of dignity that doesn't need to be announced to be felt. You've practiced the art of letting go, not as a loss, but as a liberation. And as they wrestle with the emptiness they once believed would never come, you continue your path, silent, strong, stoic, as it should be.